That could be part of I don't know. Maybe Jimmy knows how to turn it on. Is it on? Am I on? Okay, I am on. Well, I'm not only on, but I will tell you I'm Sean Murphy. I'm the president of the American Society of International Law, and it's my pleasure and honor to welcome all of you to this very special convocation. We are here to celebrate the life and work of David D. Caron, an eminent international lawyer, scholar, judge, a beloved friend, a colleague, and a mentor and a leader who had a profound and very lasting effect upon the American Society of International Law. In the wake of David's untimely passing earlier this year, there were many discussions among his family, friends, and colleagues about how best to honor his legacy and to perpetuate the things that he cared about. Over the course of those discussions, the idea emerged for a fund that would support and perpetuate one of David's proudest achievements as president of the American Society of International Law, and that is the creation of the annual research forum that takes place during the Society's mid-year meeting, and which we are in the middle of. And so this past May, with the support and encouragement of David's wife, Susan Spencer, who is here, and the entire Caron family, the Society established the David D. Caron Fund to honor David's life and achievements and to carry on his legacy. I'm pleased to announce that thanks to your generosity, as of November 6th, we have raised nearly $290,000 for the fund. Most of those funds will remain as principal and will not be touched on an annual basis, allowing the fund to exist indefinitely. Annual earnings on that principal will be used to enhance and sustain the research forum, notably through two new named activities, the David D. Caron Prize and the David D. Caron Fellowships. Allow me to say a few words about both activities. The David D. Caron Prize, which will be announced for the first time during the course of this convocation, is awarded on an annual basis to the best paper presented at the research forum by a current student or a recent graduate. The prize includes a travel stipend to enable the recipient to attend the Society's annual meeting, where the formal presentation award will take place at the Society's assembly. I want to give special thanks to the 2018 Caron Prize Selection Committee, which consisted of its chair, Andrea Borkland, and committee members Jay Butler, Fleur Johns, Frederick Sorgens, and Carlos Vasquez. They read dozens of papers within a compressed time frame in order to enable us to announce the recipient at this convocation. The David D. Caron Fellowships, which will be offered beginning in 2019, will provide support to students or recent graduates whose papers are selected to be presented at the research forum and who require financial assistance in order to attend. Now, thanks are due to many people who helped to make the creation of this fund possible. First, each and every one of you present here today who have contributed to the fund, I deeply thank you. You are listed in the program. I also want to express our special gratitude to Judge Charles N. Brower, who's here and will soon speak, and the members of the Spencer and Caron families who provided matching gifts. It's their commitment that helped to spur others to also join in this cause. I'd like to also acknowledge Dr. Kian Murphy, who's also here in the front row, a close friend and colleague of David's, who's been an integral part of this initiative from the very beginning and is with us today. Kian, since you won't be speaking, I'd like you to stand up and allow us to applaud your efforts in bringing this forward. Finally, I'd like to thank Susan Spencer, who will be speaking shortly. She's given this effort her strong personal support. It means a great deal to us, to our society, to have you here today, and to present the very first of the David D. Caron Prizes. It's now my honor to introduce the Honorable Charles N. Brower, a past president and benefactor of the Society, who will speak about his friend and colleague, David Caron. For those of you who don't know, Charlie is a former partner at Weiss & Case. He's a former judge of the Iran U.S. Claims Tribunal. He is a former ASIL president and the winner of ASIL's highest award, the Hudson Medal for Preeminent Scholarship and Achievement in International Law. He's currently a member of Essex Street Chambers in London, where he's a very active arbitrator, and he's currently an ad hoc judge on the International Court of Justice in multiple cases. Of direct relevance to this ceremony, Charlie is a longtime friend and mentor of David D. Caron. Charlie, the floor is yours.
David was my very first law clerk at the Iran United States Claims Tribunal when I started work there on the 16th of January, 1984. I had accepted him for the position sight unseen, based only on looking at his CV. When I saw that he had been, I hope I get this right, our Coast Guard officers present will tell me if I got it wrong, Commander of the Regimental Corps of Cadets of the United States Coast Guard. That was plenty for me, and my judgment proved to be correct. But I felt sorry for David, because by the time he and I became a team, he was already 31 years old. Due to having served as required as a Coast Guard officer for 5 years, plus a year on a Fulbright scholarship at the University of Wales, earning a master's degree in marine law and policy before his 3 years at Berkeley, UC Berkeley's Bolt Hall School of Law. Now, I had told many youngsters over the years that the 20s are the most critical years in building the foundation for your future career. And here he's 31. And I myself had been blessed, at least for a time, with an early and fast rise. So I felt David was getting rather a late start. He was, but I was wrong about him. I only need point out that when David and I were both appointed in 2014 by the Republic of Colombia as judges ad hoc at the International Court of Justice in separate but parallel contentious proceedings commenced against it by Nicaragua, David was 62, while I, his supposed mentor, was already 79. And not so long thereafter, when David had become my successor as a titular judge of the Iran United States Claims Tribunal, he was appointed an ICJ judge ad hoc a second time, this time by the United States, thereby leaving me in his dust. By the time David died on the 20th of February of this year at age 65, he had achieved thrice over his life's ambition of being an international judge in The Hague. What I myself had not fully known, despite all the years we spent together, was the full extent of the hardships David had overcome along the way. His father suffered a crippling stroke when David was just 12 years old, and being by far the youngest of 3 children, the heaviest and the longest burden fell on him. Therefore, as a teenager, he was an agricultural laborer in the summers, sweating and straining under the hot sun. With no money for an education, he targeted the Coast Guard Academy, only to be rejected due to a pronounced underbite. What to do? David suffered his jaw to be surgically broken at age 18 and reset so that it could meet the Academy's medical standards, and he was then accepted. As a Coast Guard diving officer in the Arctic, he also became much too close to drowning on one occasion that he did tell us about. I'm sure I never learned the full catalog of the hurdles that David had to surmount on his way to his extraordinary successes. I think all present are aware of his academic achievements, first during his many years at Berkeley, then as Dean of the Dixon Poon School of Law at King's College, London. Most of you likely also have at least an inkling of his activities as a barrister admitted to the Bar of England and Wales, as international arbitrator in celebrated cases. Excuse me. As a member of the United Nations Compensation Commission, which, incidentally, was the instrument of him and Susan meeting in Geneva, falling in love and embarking on their marriage made in heaven. For those present this evening in particular, related to the Society, I note that David regarded our American Society of International Law as his truest professional home, and his years as our president as his greatest contribution to the world he loved so much, the world of international law. Possibly, however, only his students, his family, and his most intimate friends knew of David's, shall we just say, unserious side. Singing was a passion with him, and everywhere he went in the world, he sang in a choir or other choral ensemble. Please note, however, and his former students will know this, that in the course of his singing career, he developed an unbelievably accurate imitation of Elvis Presley, while adapting the songs of the king of rock and roll to the circumstances, renamed Grade Me Tender or Amazing Grades. Well, on the subject of David's singing, I must tell a story on our current president, Sean Murphy. David and Susan spent the first year of David's presidency of the Society in Washington, D.C., taking sabbatical from Berkeley. And every working day, and I'm sure some non-working days, the two of them, David and Susan, would be at work at Tiller House, our headquarters in Washington. So they had time to get to know Washington. Well, one evening, Sean and his wife were driving Susan and David downtown for dinner when they passed the National Cathedral. Sean, ever the matchless host, pointed out the cathedral to David and Susan as the car passed it, noting its importance as a D.C. landmark. Whereupon David made it clear that, I know the cathedral. I sang there with a Coast Guard's Academy's Glee Club at the memorial service for President Truman. Sean's stunned reaction was, "Just how old are you?" Beyond singing, David told jokes. Some, shall we say, better than others. Always laughing himself, sometimes before he quite got to the punchline. To his family's distress, he invested in a classic Thunderbird automobile, sort of a robin's egg blue, which, when it was moved to The Hague, definitely turned heads. His and Susan's home has been lined with framed antique prints of cartoons, mostly from 19th century Harper's Bazaar, dealing with specific events in international law. One that I'm particularly aware of is of the Confederate raider, the Alabama, coming over the horizon to the evident distress of northern ladies who had booked passage on a Yankee ship. David was an admirable example of the ability to have fun while forging an extraordinary career. I close with two quotations that I know by now are familiar to many of you, but which are so true. The message that came to me announcing David's death read as follows: "Now cracks a noble heart. Flights of angels have sung our prince to his rest." These words of Horatio, uttered on the death of Hamlet in Shakespeare's play, encapsulate all of the sentiments that all who knew David held and hold in respect of him. His was a noble heart. He was a prince of international law who overcame much to become everything. Finally, I cannot help but once more here note that to me, David's guide in life was precisely that, penned by a barely 23-year-old Abraham Lincoln, when announcing in the March 15, 1832 issue of the Sangamo Journal his candidacy for the Illinois state legislature. Every man is said to have his peculiar ambition. Whether it be true or not, I can say for one that I have no other so great as that of being truly esteemed of my fellow men by rendering myself worthy of their esteem.
Well, thank you, Charlie, for those very eloquent words. It was such a pleasure to have you here to convey those thoughts. It's now my great pleasure to ask Susan Spencer, David's widow, to come to the podium to offer remarks on behalf of the family and to announce the recipient of the first David D. Caron Prize.
Before we announce the winner of the 2018 David D. Caron Prize, I would like to give a thanks and acknowledge those that made it possible. I will mourn the loss of David forever, but I will also be grateful for the time together forever, and I will celebrate his life forever. When David died unexpectedly in February, I was blessed with the support from family and friends and from David's international law colleagues and community, a community he loved and cultivated, a community that in my darkest hour, when I was desperate, afraid that David's work would fade away. Two people supported me, and without them, there wouldn't be a David D. Caron Prize to award today. And those two people are Kean Murphy and Charlie Brower. Thank you for championing David's legacy. David loved international law and ASIL. When David was president of ASIL, he wrote down thoughts that would be emailed back to him. They were called thoughtbacks. I guess it's something Apple Mail did. I continue to check David's email. And a thought he wrote on the 19th of February, 2011, when we were in Washington, recently came back, and I share it with you. Quote, "The voices of ASIL are similar. In isolation, they seem quite different. They speak to the IMF addressing exchange rates, a drone watching a remote village in Yemen, the ice vanishing in the Arctic, and a child without parents in eastern Congo. But together, they all speak to the role of law in international relations. They all seek a world not only with law, but with justice." The participants in the David D. Caron Prize competition are the voices of ASIL, scholars writing and speaking on international law, and thus the prize is aptly named. However, celebrating and being grateful for David, that is the heart of the prize. When news spread of David's passing, the international law community was stunned and saddened. The creation of the David D. Caron Fund and Prize created an avenue for that grief to be transformed to gratitude. And the response and continues to be amazing, and the contributions have surpassed expectations. If you look through the name of the donors, you will recognize a few well-known international lawyers and barristers, judges. David was an amazing scholar, but people don't give purely to recognize someone's body of work. Thus, the list also includes names you may not recognize that reflect David: a warm and generous teacher and peer, a cherished friend and mentor, a gracious host, a great neighbor, the community member with the broad smile and the big laugh. The winner of the prize is now one of the lucky ones, someone whose life path is touched by David. My hope, and the hope of everyone who has contributed to the fund, is that you continue your scholastic work, you actively participate in ASIL, and that you are a warm and generous teacher and peer, a cherished friend and mentor, and a community member with a big smile. And the lucky one is, I'm going to hopefully say this quite correctly, I'm very pleased, Leon Castellanos Jankovitz. Recognition will come at the annual meeting. I'm so pleased you'll be there, and I'll see you again, get a chance to meet you and talk to you. But in the interim, we have a little momentum, a remembrance from today, one of David's publications. So thank you so much.
Susan and Ron, perhaps. Susan, thank you so very much. It's now my pleasure to invite Professor Asli Abali, who's the faculty director of the Promise Institute for Human Rights here at UCLA Law School, to offer some concluding remarks on behalf of our host institution, and just on a personal note here, to express our deep gratitude to UCLA Law School for hosting the Research Forum this year, for allowing us to have this wonderful convocation. It's really been a very warm and welcoming approach that UCLA has taken to this, and we're very grateful to you for it.
It is an enormous pleasure for me to be able to be here to welcome everyone and to thank you for joining us. It's especially a pleasure to take this moment to remember David Caron and to join in what has already been an incredibly moving tribute to him, to the remarkable career that he had. He was, of course, part of the University of California family and will remain so. And I had the great pleasure of meeting him for the first time as a junior scholar myself, invited to present at Berkeley. And he, of course, had the reputation of his brilliance, of his remarkable professional accomplishments. But what I had not expected was the warmth, the kindness, the generosity, how funny he was. What an enormous pleasure it was to be able to spend time with him over dinner, to learn from him, and to learn what it meant to be with someone who could be a mentor to someone he had only just met. So it really was an incredible contribution that he made to the society, to the field, to the University of California. We will all miss him terribly, but we're delighted to have this opportunity to join together with the society in honoring him and in hosting this convocation to really recognize his accomplishments and his contribution. We are also delighted to be able to partner with the society. It's not the first time we've had this pleasure. It's not the first time we're hosting the Midyear, but the Midyear itself has grown commensurate with the ambition and accomplishment of the society, and it's been fantastic to be able to see that growth by seeing all that the Midyear has brought here to our halls. So it's been a tremendous pleasure for us generally at UCLA, and I want to name the two programs that have been most instrumental in organizing our ability to serve in this way. The International and Comparative Law program at UCLA, which itself has grown over the same period. So we now are a much larger program, more ambitious. We now host a specialization for our JD students and our LLM students. And I want to recognize Jessica Peak, who's here, who is the manager of the program and who has also been an absolutely invaluable partner in organizing everything that has made this day and this overall 3 days run so smoothly. Jessica directs the International and Comparative Law program, and she's also the assistant director of our other significant host, the Promise Institute for Human Rights, and beside her is Kate McIntosh, our executive director, and as Sean mentioned, I'm the faculty director of the Promise Institute. This is a new initiative here at UCLA that's just in its second year, but we are tremendously excited about the possibilities, including the possibilities of partnering again with the society. So this is an area of incredible importance, significance, and growth for our field as a whole in international law. And on the West Coast, we're really looking forward to, together with the University of California as a whole, building a hub that can be a West Coast partner for the American society. And this is a step in that direction. So we're really delighted across the board to be able to have everyone here together with us here at UCLA and to be able to really solidify the partnership that we've developed over the years with the American Society. It is also a pleasure for me to invite all of you to join us for a reception that the law school is hosting in order to celebrate our gathering here and the important work that the society does and the work of really showcasing the research that that this community is capable of doing, and the junior scholars that have been included in our midst who are now really revitalizing and growing further our society. So please join us for this reception, and thank you so much for coming to the convocation and for joining us over these 3 days.